My name is David Black, and welcome again to another training video on how to use Photopea, the image editing browser-based software tool. Today we're going to learn how to use the Lasso Selection tool, the Quick Mask mode, and layer masks to isolate an image from its background and combine images together. For example, we're going to be creating a diagram of the rock cycle and show you how to create collages. Let's get to it. As our primary example, I'm going to show you how to take photos of a rock that was taken against a concrete background and then isolate that rock so you can't see the concrete. I've gone ahead and loaded up a photo of some banded rhyolite into Photopea. What I'm going to do is start by using the Lasso tool to select the larger of the two rocks here. The Lasso tool is the third tool down on the left, which is the rectangle selection or marquee tool. If you hold your mouse down on it, then Lasso Select is one of the choices. Or you can just use L on your keyboard. Now the lasso basically kind of works like a cowboy's lariat or lasso to select a certain amount of pixels. And all you have to do is just hold your mouse down and drag. Now you can't really see the selection line very well here, but it's there. And what I'm doing is going around this rock. I'm not getting terribly close to it, just making sure I'm staying on the outside of it. And what I'm going to try to do is get this rock isolated from the concrete in the background. Now that I come back to where I started, I can release and I get the marching ants around it. I'm going to zoom in with Control Plus so I can see this a little bit better. With the marching ants turned on and the lasso selected, I can use these Boolean selection controls up here in the option bar. The first tool on the left creates a new selection. The second one adds to the selection. The third one subtracts from a selection. And the fourth one intersects, or takes only where the two areas overlap. If I choose the minus selection, I can cut out some of these extra areas. So I'm starting outside the selection and then kind of coming in here and then swinging back around, and you can see that cuts off some of the selection. So I can add to or subtract from the selection once it's turned on. The goal here is to get the selection as perfect as possible, or as tight right around the rock so that no concrete is showing, but only the rock. But this is a little bit hard to see what I'm doing. So there's another method that can be used to modify a selection, and that's called the Quick Mask mode. To do that, you come down here to the bottom of your tool palette and click on this button that looks like a circle, dark circle inside of a rectangle. It's called the Quick Mask mode. So if I click on it, you see that a change occurs. Everything that is not selected gets highlighted in this kind of salmon red color. Everything that is selected is clear. The beauty of this is I can now use my paintbrush to actually paint the selection on and off. And I can set the edge of the paintbrush to be as soft as I want it to be. So I'm going to come over here and choose the paintbrush. I have black and white as the colors. So black, if I select that, that will turn on the red, meaning that it's turning off the selection and deselecting. White means I'm turning on the selection. I can come up here to the top and choose different sizes. If I click on this left button here. So the size 15 is probably pretty good. The hardness, I don't want to be up all the way. Maybe about 2/3, something like that. So it's got just a little bit of softness on the edge. That will make it look a bit more natural. So I can just barely see kind of the paintbrush against this orange rhyolite. But as I paint it, it paints on red. That means it's turning off the selection. And I can get as close in at the edge here as I want to. And if I accidentally do what I just did there, on purpose, I can switch the colors. So I'm painting white and then paint off the selection. Sometimes that's easier to actually paint it on rather than off. So I'm going to go around and get this edge just as close to perfect as I can get it. And we'll speed this up and come back in just a minute. Okay, I've finished going around this rock using the Quick Masks tool, so that now you can see everything except for the rock is in red, meaning that it's not selected, and then everything that's clear is selected. Now all I have to do is come over here and click on Quick Mask mode again, and it gets me back to my marching ants. Now at this point it's probably a good idea to save this selection as an alpha channel in case I need to use it again. So that's up under Select, Save Selection. Okay, and if I go to Channels, I now have Alpha 1. Back here in my Layers palette, I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. And this layer I'm going to fill with white and eventually put it behind the background layer just by dragging it down here. But first, in the background layer, what's now the rock layer, which I should probably rename. So if I double click on the word, I can say rock. With the selection turned on, I can now create what's called a layer mask. To do that, you go down to the bottom where you have these tools at the bottom of the layers palette. And here's this kind of mask image again, the rectangle with a dark circle in it. If I click on it, it creates this black and white, or technically grayscale image here that's part of the layer. And that determines the transparency of the layer. Where the mask is white, it basically shows that layer. Where it's black, it's like a hole cutting down through to the layer underneath. Now at this point I can go down to layer 1. I'm going to select it all, that's Command A or Control A if you're not on a Mac. I'm going to say Edit, Fill. Right now white is my background color, so I'm going to choose Background and say OK. So it fills that background layer with white. Now we could create a drop shadow here if we wanted to. I have to click on the layer and then go down to the EFF button and choose Drop Shadow. And you see it's got a drop shadow there. And I can play around with the distance, turn that up a little bit, change the size of it so it spreads out a little bit more. And that looks okay. Helps to isolate it from the background. But this might look better with a cast shadow. So I'm going to do a couple of little adjustments to it here. First, I'm going to rotate the image so it looks like it's standing up a bit more. So I'm selecting the area first, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and Rotate. What I can do is point to the little corners here, and I get the rotation tool, and then drag this around. It's being a little stubborn. There it goes. So I've got both the mask and the original image rotated the way I want it to go. Now what I need to do, I think I'm going to turn off this layer effect. So I'll choose the effects image here and then turn back on the effects and turn off the drop shadow. Okay, so all I have is the rock here. Now to create a cast shadow, what I'm going to do is to create a duplicate of this layer. I'll drag it down to the new layer icon, which is this little folded piece of paper down here at the bottom, and I have rock and rock copy. I'm going to go to the rock layer and turn off the link between the two images, between the layer mask and the image itself, and then choose the mask. I have to click on it, and what I'm going to do is to blur the mask, make it so it has a softer edge. And so that's under Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. I think I'll turn this up to about 60. I want this to be fairly blurry. Say OK. All right, there we go. It's pretty blurry. The next step, though, is that I'm going to squish this layer mask down. So I'll use Edit, Transform, and Scale. Holding down Shift, I'm going to drag this down. You begin to see that it looks like I'm kind of compressing the shadow, making it shorter, like it's laying down on a surface. Hit Enter to finalize it. Now what I'll do is click on the actual image in this underlayer here, and I'm going to put in a gradient. So I'll choose the gradient tool. I want it to be from black to white. Instead of linear, I'm going to change it to radial, meaning from the center out. And then on the image layer itself, I'm going to drag this from about the center across like this. So what it does, it replaces the layer with a grayscale image that makes it look like it's fading out. And now what I can do is go back to the mask, take the layer move tool, move this around until it looks like this rock is casting it on a surface, on the ground around it. Something like about that. Now the final thing I can do here is go ahead and flatten the layers. I go to Layer and choose Flatten Image. So they're all on one layer. And now I can select the whole thing. About like that. I'm going to say Command C, or if you're on Windows machine, it's Control C. So I'm copying that to the clipboard. Now I'll go ahead and open up my developed image that has all of the other rocks in it so I can create the diagram. Here it is. So you can see I've created all these rocks with all these different layers and with cast shadows on them. And I just need one more, this rhyolite rock. So I'm going to go ahead and say Command V to paste it. There it is. I need to kind of bring it up so it's on top of everything else in my layers palette. There we go. But it's too big, so I'm going to shrink it down. Edit, Transform, Scale, and then dragging in the corners, I'll shrink this down. It will automatically keep its proportions. And then I'm going to drag this over where I want it to go, which is about here, let's say. You can see it's covering over these other rocks a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and say Enter or Return. Now to finally cut out the parts I don't want to see where it's covering the other rocks, I can go into my Lasso Selection tool one more time and just select these areas where it's covering the rocks like this. And then press Delete to get rid of it. Did a pretty good job, but let's zoom in. But it looks like I'm going to have to do this. This doesn't have the layer mask with it anymore because I've copied and pasted it into a new file. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more precise how I cut this. Okay. Now I've got all the rocks in their own layers where I want them to be. They're still here. I'm going to name this layer. This is going to be rhyolite. And I've got all these individual rocks with their own cast shadows in their own layers. But to finish up this diagram, I need to add some arrows and some words and so on. In a previous video, we talked about how to do text effects. So I'm going to show you how to work with guidelines and how to create arrows here. Let's begin by making a brand new layer. I'll click on the new layer icon. I'm going to name this layer Arrows. If I could spell. There we go. Right now this is 10 inches wide, so I can drag out a guideline from the left ruler and put it right on the 5. It kind of snaps into position because that's the middle of the image. Then I'll drag one out from the top and it snaps into position on 4. Okay. This is 8 by 10. So I'm doing that so I have a center for creating an elliptical selection. I'll go up to my selection tool, choose the elliptical selection tool here, and then starting in the very middle here on my crosshairs. So I'm going to drag this out from the center while I'm holding down the Alt or Option button, and then that drags it out from the center point. I'm going to make this arrow kind of cross through all of the rock types here like that. Now what I'm going to do is create a circle around this ellipse and then erase out the parts of it I don't want to see. And to do that, I'll use the stroke command. Let's pick a color here. So I think I'll want to do this arrow in red. So if I go up here under Edit, I can choose Stroke. And I can set how many pixels I want this to be. I want this to be fairly thick. Now let's bump this up to, say, about 50 pixels. All right, now we're talking. Okay, I'm going to do Command D to turn off the selection and also go up to View and Clear Guides. Now to make the arrows here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and use the Eraser tool, which if you look at it here, is this tool right here up above the gradient. I'll just choose the basic eraser and it acts like a paintbrush, so I can make this as thick as I want to. Make this pretty thick. And I'm going to erase out the parts where there are rocks. But this isn't an arrow yet. To make an arrow, I'm going to have to create a shape like an arrowhead. I've just got connecting lines more or less. So to do that, I'm going to use another version of the Lasso tool, which is called the polygonal Lasso tool. To use it, instead of just dragging an irregular shape around something, you just click and it will drag out a straight line. Click again to make another line. So I'm going to create an arrowhead shape. Click, let's come down about here, here, and I'm going to make this kind of concave. Then come back to where we started and release. And I'll go ahead and fill this in with red. That's under Edit, Fill, Foreground Color, Normal 100%. That looks good. So I've got this red. It's currently selected. So if I point to it, I can hold down Alt and Command at the same time and drag out a copy of this. Put it where I want it to go, but we need to rotate that a little bit. So Edit, Transform, Rotate. Drag these corners around a little bit and press return. Okay, so now I've got arrows pointing in the direction I want to go. I can go ahead and use the rectangular selection tool to just select the original arrow. I've got white for my background color, so I can just press delete. Fills that in with white. And the final thing, since this is all on one layer, I could go ahead and put a drop shadow on it. Okay, so that's pretty much how to make the diagram. What I would still add here is some text. Name the different types of rocks and the categories of rocks, put a title in the center, and probably what I also want to do is make another set of arrows going on the inside but going in the opposite direction. There are many applications of this technique. Let me show you a couple more. So I'll go ahead and save this. Here's an example of a project that I did a number of years ago for a cover for a workshop binder for the NASA Educational Workshops programs at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory that blends a lot of different pictures. Some of them are semi-transparent, some of them use blending modes, but many of them, for example, this picture of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory down here, I used a layer mask to cut off the mountains. I used a layer mask to select around Mars and the Mars 2001 Odyssey probe here, and also this mock-up here of the Mars exploration rovers. So you can see a lot of different layers were used, if I scroll through it, with a lot of layer masks, everything blended together to create this final image. Here's another example. The layers have been flattened so that you don't see them anymore, but I wanted to do this as kind of a fun project of me with a few of my close personal friends. This was kind of difficult because some of the images were black and white, and some of them were just paintings like the ones of Copernicus and Galileo and so on. So I had to kind of blend them in here and add a little bit of lighting effects and make them look like they belonged in this classroom, and then add myself in the center of it. These were all created using the same technique that you just learned, using layer masks to isolate an image from its background. I hope that you can see that there are many ways in which you can use this technique for your science media projects. Thank you for watching, and keep on learning.